Episode of the Marketing Podcast is brought to you by Neighborhood Domains. Every business needs a domain name, including yours. Visit neighborhooddomains.com and use offer code MARKETING to get 10% off hosting.
On this episode, we are talking about media events, whether or not you need to do one, how to do one, and what do you do after one.
Creativity sells. Applying the right creative at the right time is the recipe for great marketing. The Marketing Podcast looks at marketing news and finds the secret ingredients that make great marketing.
Hi, welcome to the Marketing Podcast. I'm Heather Watson.
And I'm Brendan Quigley.
How you doing today, Brendan?
Really good.
Really good. I'm doing great. We just had a spectacular event, and I want to talk I only want to talk about it.
Okay.
If I can learn how to talk.
What was the event?
It was a media event. You know, like a presser, a news conference. We are just doing an event for the sake of getting, you know, they do it to put on newspapers and in TV and radio and
What
is that?
Newspaper?
It's how news is spread. Actual news.
All right, I do know what a presser is.
Yeah.
I do know what it is.
Yeah. So today, because of that, I want to talk about nothing but that. So I have no articles to reference. I know. There's no reading to do.
I'm going to get a soundboard for the podcast so I can just
dun,
have
dun, dun.
like different noises.
Just be our voices. We'll record those as sound
bites and just dub them in. To do.
So I want to just talk about how to do a media event and the steps that are involved. And this whole episode is going to be just about that because we do a lot of them and people often ask us.
Can I ask a question off the bat?
Okay.
Do you even need to do one? Is it even important?
That's actually a good question.
But I'm just saying most of my news comes from the internet.
Right. You're right. You're absolutely right. And so that's probably the very first place to start is whether or not you need to do one because there's other ways to spread news. You can just write it up in a media release and distribute it to whoever your media outlets are in your community. I'm thinking like this is like small business stuff that are launching a new product or expanding a new whatever. But then the question is it even news? And that's really the first place to start. Yes.
I feel like that's a fantastic question.
Is it even news? We have a lot of clients who want to do a media release, a media event, and it's because they've, hired a new staff member and it's not like a C-suite staff member. It's, or we've got a new product line. And I often try and step back a little bit and say, okay, where's the news in this? And it has to be community worthy because the reality is if you send out as a rookie a media release yourself, as opposed to hiring an agency, if you send out a media release and it's not actually news, you'll get lots of response, but it won't be from the journalists. It will be from the ad sales departments.
Oh, interesting.
From every one of those media
outlets. Oh, that makes
outlets.
sense because they'll be like, yep, not news, but they'll pass it off to the ad department.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So it really has to be something that is, community wide, that's of particular interest. Now you can still, I don't want to say fabricate news, but you can still turn non-news into news if it's the right media outlet. So using the retail store that sells clothes and say you're selling a new elite brand of running shoes, maybe there's a fashion editor in the community, a little news rag or an online publicist or something.
I'm thinking blogs also.
Blogs for
that's
sure.
Kind of news nowadays.
For sure.
All right.
So, hyper local kind of stuff. So it's still news to those people. It's just not going to get front page or lead story on TV, radio, or print. And you need that extra boost. So let's say we've established, yes, it is news, and you've got something that's catches the attention of journalists. You want to do that because it helps you spread your message. It almost validates whatever your news is, as opposed to you just putting up on your blog and sharing it on social media. Now you've got other people talking about you. Right. And we call that goodwill as opposed to advertising. So when the media is talking about you, that you've got a new program available, you're an expert in an industry, you're perhaps responding to some new policy that's related to what you do. You're trying to position yourself and your brand as being kind of an authority there. And that gives you credibility down the road when you're trying to sell your products and services. So that's kind of the why. when you have something newsworthy to say. But the very first question to start is it newsworthy? And then you're right. Why even have a media event?
Yeah, because I'm thinking, like you said before, just send out an email with all the details.
Yeah.
It'll make it happen.
It'll make it happen. But the but is sometimes people need visuals, right? So what we do for that is literally put on a little play. It's a production. And it has, imagine, and it depends on the media that's in your market. If you have print, if you have, a photo-rich community blog, like those kind of hyper-local types that like to come out and really show with photos. If you have radio, good radio markets, like locally represented local. I can't talk today, guys. I'm so sorry. Can we just start all over again?
And
no. So local, if you have like a local radio station, they want to get the sound clip to put on air. And if you have TV locally in your market, they want to get the visuals, the B-roll, so that while their news anchors are reading the story, they have something to put on the television, which people are watching in the background. Because
or else they can't report on it.
They can't report on it. It's a visual thing.
Does it make any sense? This just makes me think for you to have video of to videotape your own event, to record your own event, and to write a press release and then allow people to access that?
It doesn't hurt because sometimes the media folk can't attend. But typically speaking, they're going to want it in their own format, shot by their own staff. That's what they're on the road and paid to do, right? But certainly, and we'll talk about this later, news happens. So with the best of your intentions, you could coordinate, which I've done, coordinated a media launch downtown in Toronto with a pretty well-known a Canadian Olympic athlete was at it, and it was in a big building downtown, and all the media were scheduled to come, and they had confirmed, and moments before we're like, where is everybody? Nobody's here yet. And lo and behold, there was like some elevator that got stuck in a shaft, and people's lives were like precarious in hand. And you're like, what do you do? So we delayed, and then still lots of media came, but those who couldn't come, we were able to send them audio and video, and so that if they don't get there, they at least have something to run. But it's the same thing in print. They don't like to put photo submitted. They want to get their own people, their own reporters, their own photojournalists kind of covering it.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's why you do a physical thing. There's other reasons too for a small business that wouldn't necessarily apply, but sometimes, the media, if it's something controversial, I think about in the political sphere where media will want to scrum and they want to get your live reaction to things. Whereas if you're sending
Do you mean ask questions?
Sorry, yeah.
Scrum. I'm picturing football.
Yeah,
no,
and that's kind of what it is. It's a little bullish, right? So it's all the mics in hands and cameras and video cameras rolling.
Now that seems like an advantage to me. Is that something you would recommend people do? Answer questions during their media release? Following
their media release is kind of typically the agenda. So, and that's a good segue kind of into the planning of it, actually. So once you've decided, yes, we have something that's newsworthy, and yes, we're going to do an event, where do you go from here, right? You need a location. And there's all kinds of things with the location that you need to assess in terms of whether or not people can get to it easily, whether or not, we encountered today, which was, a challenge. There's audio in the room over top of the people who are speaking, right? And I admit I should have checked that out beforehand, but I've been in that location before and I've never, ever, ever heard any audio announcements.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, what the
And
heck?
it's happening the exact same time people are speaking, and it was like, oh, this isn't cool at all. It went smoothly and everything was fine, but you want to look at that. You want to look at it for lighting. You want to make sure, depending on how big your media event is, don't expect there to be droves and droves of people, but you want there to be, a room, a gathering of people, and it's going to be proportionate to your room size.
And interesting too, the media releases I've been at have all been less people than I expected, but that's because it's the media who come to it. It's not like a public event.
Right.
Yeah.
Typically speaking, you're going to have your media representatives there. Hopefully they come, and you've enticed them with an advisory, which I'll get to in a minute.
And chocolate.
Food and beverage actually works.
Yeah.
There's always usually a little refreshment cart off to the side. They come for the free food for sure. So you're going to have your media representatives there, and then you want to kind of fill out the room with other stakeholders, friends, family, depending on the nature of your relationship, depending on the nature of your announcement, if there are partners that you're announcing, their people. So you want people there, but I mean, I've been part of newsers that have been like just the media, and that's okay because they're getting their clips, they're getting their photos.
And that is the goal too, when you're talking about what is the goal of the media release.
Precisely. Yeah. I mean, if the goal is you want the media to think there's tons of energy around what you're about to announce, then you also want to make sure that you've got, other warm bodies in the room that are excited and young, that are painting the picture of the story that you're trying to tell. So going back to that retailer who has a new, running shoe brand to launch and how exciting this is, and you want them to tell that story, have lots of young people who are lined up ready to buy it.
I was going to say the lineup like that, it makes sense when they do launches for products. That's what they're going for. They're trying to get the lineup out of the store so that the press will come by.
Right. You're trying to get the press to cover it, but really you're trying to get them to cover the story that you need to get your butt down here and buy this too, because there's so many people down here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you look at your location, you look at sound, you look at lighting, right? Do you need a mic? Should you have a mic? What's the comfort level of the people who are speaking? Do they want to just stand there and be open and exposed and not have kind of a barrier between them and the audience? Or do we need to put them behind a lectern so that they're, have something to hang on to or put notes on? The staging right down to the cup of water or the backdrop behind them when you've got videographers and photographers shooting, what's back there? And like every detail, right? Making sure that your brand, your business name is somewhere on the lectern or in the background or in the shot. So people are aligning. If in the media they just see one photo with one person, your brand needs to be in that photo, or your domain name or the sneaker or whatever it is, to be able to catch people's eye. So to really stage that set, for lack of a better term, and really, like I say, you're putting on a play. It's just that, making sure everybody's kind of propped up appropriately, and then creating an agenda. And that agenda usually looks like, and these things are like 15-20 minutes for a quick little presser to get the word out about something. So you maybe would have an MC that's, or it's yourself, but it adds a little level of formality with the MC, welcoming people, asking them to kind of squish in a little bit to make the energy again tighten up. And then you'll have your speaker who makes the announcement. And we can go on for days about how that speech goes. I won't talk about that today. But whoever it is that's making the announcement, you may have again, if it's the sneaker thing and maybe the supplier or a partner or somebody, that person kind of representing the other side of the perspective. And then your MC saying, hey, thanks for coming out. It's been great. Photos in the back. We'll take questions, interviews now. And that's probably the way to do it. Unless it's like bad news, breaking news that you really need to get out. And again, I don't really think that this applies to small business for the most part, who we talk about as being our audience. That's where we try and gear this conversation to. But certainly having that media scrum following, or I'll take questions now, right? Like you've seen, White House or official press conferences. Not in recent days.
In TV shows.
Yeah, in TV shows maybe. But that kind of thing, it's not quite that. That's not your expectation when you're doing it as a small business. But really, it's just somebody's going to, the local photographer and journalist is going to pull you off in a corner and ask you a couple of questions, look around the room for a couple of interesting angles for shots, and call it a day. Like,
I'm not going to lie. I'd love to someday say no further questions and then walk off the stage.
Yeah, no comment.
No comment. No further questions.
No further questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really kind of what the event looks like in terms of your agenda. And then you want to make sure that your speakers are briefed. Those 3 speakers that we've lined up, do they know what they're saying? Are they on cue? Are they hitting the key messages? You want to, your job is basically to make the reporter's job as easy as possible. So answering the who, what, when, where, why, how, like fundamental reporting requirements, and answer those questions for them. And that's what happens at the event. I mean, generally, when you are up on stage doing your magic, making your announcement as the retailer, you want to have a colleague in the audience who's identifying who the media are, identifying anybody else who maybe showed up that you didn't know would show up. Like, if the Prime Minister of Canada dropped in on your presser, you need to be able to tap tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, you better like let this dude speak. Modify the agenda stat, right? So somebody kind of watching it for that, watching it for media as they're arriving. And then as an aid to the media, again, thinking in mind that some may not be able to attend for various reasons, you also write a media release and send it out to your media contacts, but have print copies available to distribute to the media in attendance. And that way they've got the confidence in mind, knowing that they don't have to check spelling on somebody's name or, worry about like the very specifics. If you're mentioning very specifics, they can see the media release in hand and know that the details are there. And they can really just focus on capturing the images and capturing the story and figuring out what their angle is going to be when they write about you.
So I think this is a pro tip, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. But the timing of when you hand out that media release is important at the event.
Yeah. So the timing on that, you don't want to scoop yourself.
You've told me about this before.
Yeah. You'd never want to scoop yourself, even at today's presser. I was that person who was going around saying hello to the media, thanking them for coming, and kind of giving them a little hype. One member of the media showed up like a half hour early, and he's like, "So, what's going on? What's your big news?" And it's like, nope.
He might have wanted to try to get it out
totally
20 minutes before everybody else.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not fair. And that's, you're holding a media event to give everybody fair access to the news that you're about to share. So where that really hits you isn't at that event, it's at the next event that you try and organize. Because if you leak the story to somebody a day beforehand or half an hour beforehand and they get the scoop, the next time you have a media event, the media aren't going to be as nice to show up because they see that you're playing favorites. And that's not good in the industry. It's like, why come? You're going to send me the piece of paper. I'll get the paper when you send the paper. That explains what's going on. And it's not worth the effort to show up. And that's counterintuitive for what your goals are.
And I guess I've seen this with the clients that we've worked with and the clients that you've helped do press releases for. It really is about being honest with your media, your local media, and building up that relationship with them that allows you to successfully say, I'm having a press release. They all come. They know they're getting the piece of paper. They know that you're not going to leak the story. They know that it's actually news, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, because we do it professionally, we have relationships with the media, particularly in this market, because this is where we do a lot of those events. But having the relationships with the media is really important to be able to understand and respect their trade. They have a job to do, and they don't want to be used, right? Like to tell your seedy story that has nothing to do with news, and they want to be able to be... The more tools you can give them to successfully tell your story, the easier their job is, and the more likely they are going to tell your story the way you want it told. So yeah, being fair and transparent with them.
I'm going to segue into having a press package on your website if you're a brand, so that they can get easy access to a high resolution logo and, again, spellings of the names and maybe bios of your CEO and employees and all that kind of stuff.
Anything that helps tell the story and keep the pieces together. Absolutely.
I've even seen media logins, but I mean, that's much larger brands where they get credentials and there's almost an internal news source for just press releases.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is with press who have credentials to usually, like you say, larger media events. I think of it more of like festivals and events.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the weekend long concerts or the weekend long festivals, and they want the music media to have access to the schedules or... Again,
and there's almost like a separate schedule for the press. Come 10 minutes early to this and you can get your opportunity and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, from a technology point of view, very easy to do, people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true, right? And it's also again, thinking about those music festivals as the example, if all of a sudden... it's an outdoor festival and there's a thunderstorm pending, and they want the media, if the media know in advance that they have this back end access to the media access portal, you can put out information saying, we have to cancel, the 3:00 show due to thunderstorms, and that you can keep them up to date that way. And it saves you as the organizer from having to field 20 phone calls and going nuts. They know that they can log in and get the information they need, and you post it there first and then deal with questions and comments secondary to that, right?
Yeah.
But that's certainly larger scale. So that kind of is all in your planning stage. What people are going to say, how they're going to say it, the order in which they speak, and your location, thinking about your backdrop and all that kind of stuff. In advance, always have the media release written. If there's anybody that you're including as speakers, have a quote from them in the media release. And sometimes that goes against delivery, right? So you've got a speaker who has a written speech, and you pull a quote from that speech and put it in your media release and send the media release out. But the speaker actually said the quote totally different, or didn't say the quote, or, and these things happen. And there's a term called check against delivery, usually that you use when you're sharing speeches. But as long as the quote has the general gist, people are pretty okay.
The essence of the quote.
The essence of the quote, but it gives them something that's official that they can write. But it could bite you if you're not careful.
I don't normally like to talk about this kind of stuff, but Trump did do like a shouldn't mistake,
right?
Or couldn't mistake dealing with Putin, and like the essence was totally lost.
Yeah, you can't change the context of the quote, but as long as the spirit is there, it's good, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then while the media release is happening or media event is happening and they're giving their speeches, so you're giving out those printed copies to the media pretty much as the speakers start speaking. So then they're like, oh, okay, great. Now I've got the names, I've got the details, and they'll skim it really quickly, and then they'll focus on the event. So that job is done. But then also in the queue, in your email queue, you've got that media release primed up, ready to send out, at the same time. So timing on these things are very important to make sure if you say it's going to start at 11 o'clock, that you start at 11 o'clock because you have a media release that's in the queue to go out at 11 o'clock. And if you don't start until 11:30, then you've just scooped yourself.
Well, and we also did the same thing with updating the website for this particular event. So we had the media release ready to go on the website as a blog to schedule, but we also had like a whole other page on the website that had to be published, but not until the press release happened. And so we had someone waiting to hit publish on those things to then go live, because again, every little bit counts when they're
and I'm a little nervous sometimes auto scheduling depending on the event, and if somebody does say the quote wrong or the person hasn't had a chance to really review their remarks beforehand, so it could just go anywhere and you don't know. I won't auto schedule that kind of stuff. I'll just have it all in draft. And then after I'm like, okay, we're good, things are moving forward, I'll hit send.
And this is what a smartphone's for, right?
Yeah.
It's all right there.
Yeah, you're on the fly. And literally, while I was standing there today talking to I handed the piece of paper to somebody and like a reporter, and he said, oh, would you mind sending me the electronic copy too? And I looked at my phone, I'm like, it's already in your inbox, like done. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, thank you.
Copy paste.
Yeah, like it was already in the queue, right? It was ready to go. So those are the little details that count, that help them tell the story quickly and correctly.
And they'll come back to you.
Yeah.
That's all relationships.
Yeah, totally. And then finally we get into the post event. Once basically everybody's done speaking, as people are cleaning up, and these things, like I say, 15, 20 minutes at most, it's monitoring the media and listening to, what they're saying. It's making sure that all those, blog posts that you've got in the queue have now published. You could even have the social media in the queue, right? If you've got Facebook and Twitter and Instagram posts to go, have them go and start looking at what media who are live tweeting or posting stuff on Facebook and tagging you in things, start sharing their stuff and commenting on their stuff and being engaged with it. And one of the things that I tend to do, which I'm guilty of today even, is immediately after the event, you want to try and keep your schedule free for an hour or two. In the event that media have additional questions, they didn't get the clip that they needed. Could you send me over a shot? I didn't make it. What did I miss? Want to do additional interviews? How do you do that? So try and keep your schedule open for an hour or two after the event, so that, you're not suddenly in a recording studio and nobody can reach you, because that's what's happening right now.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Heather's off to check her emails.
That's right. I got my computer open. My phone hasn't started to ring yet. I think we're okay. And it was a couple of hours ago that we did do it. So, But it is important because, depending on the relationships that you have with your media, they may go, oh, shoot, would you mind send me this, that, or the other thing? So it's important to keep yourself available afterwards. And then you start getting into kind of media management, like not the hours after, but the day after and the next day after, when you start seeing that stuff roll out in the newspaper and roll out on your, television and hear the clips on the radio, and monitoring that, because sometimes it's not always great news. Even if you're running shoes, there may be a critic because, those shoes were made with child labor or something. And next thing you know, you've got a bit of a storm happening afterwards. So it's monitoring that and being part of the conversation and putting out those fires as they arise. So that's the other piece, kind of post event, and capturing all the content so that you can continue to, again, one of the reasons is not just to tell your story, but in having others tell your story, you've got the credibility. And if you're now sharing their content, it's basically sharing your credibility and lending credibility to your story. So that's it. That's a wrap. That's all I got on media releases, media events.
I've got one other thing, and I know you know about it, and it might be beneficial to people looking to get their business into news, and that's the Harrow, Help a Reporter Out.
Oh, Harrow. Yeah. Harrow. Yeah.
And so I got on that. So I found that a long time ago, but the amount of emails was so much I had to stop it.
It's pretty.
But they've since segmented it
yeah.
so you can get less, but in your industry. And correct me if I'm wrong, but basically reporters can sign up and ask Harrow to send out their request. They're trying to write a story on something, and then Harrow will send a request out. And if you meet the needs for that story, maybe they're looking for an interview for a particular marketing agency because they're writing a story on how you market yourself or something like that, it could go out to Harrow, you could see it and then respond to it. So it's like potential news stories that you could be part of.
Yeah. I mean, it really is, I wouldn't say niche, but some of the stuff, it's like, I'm looking for a botanist who understands photosynthesis as it relates to Venus flytrap plants growing in Southern America. It's
but for
really,
the plant store that sells those Venus flytraps, it's a gold mine.
Yeah, it's like, I'm an expert.
Exactly.
I know about these things.
Yeah.
So, but other stuff is much more wide in terms of its breadth. And you can kind of choose where you think your areas of expertise are, or where you feel you could not apply, but if there's a journalist looking for something, you could contribute positively to the conversation.
It's kind of a natural way to try to get your business into the news, I think.
Yeah. And particularly if you are trying to position yourself and your brand and your business as being an expert in the industry, because when you suddenly become the go-to person with your media because you respect them and you give them reliable information that's trustworthy, then that gives them, the next time they're not going to post it on Harrow, they're just going to give you a call.
Correct.
And say, hey, this issue's up again.
Our favorite thing for this episode.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, we
play
love
the
music. We listen
soundtrack,
to it. Yeah, and it is a really cool resource, and it's just harrow.com, HARO, which is an acronym for Help a Reporter Out. And you can even segment it down by geographic area, I believe, so that you're...
It's not harrow.com.
Oh, no, it's not harrow.com.
That is a German site.
It's Help a Reporter Out, HARO, I know that. Dead air, right?
Helpareporter.com.
Helpareporter.com. There you go. Yeah. So check that out as a resource for sure. And see if that's something that you can perhaps, like you say, Brendan, the emails just get atrocious. I mean, I was getting
so many emails
daily.
I think they did it twice a day, and
by category.
And so you pick your category. This isn't something where it's you're going to get every
Don't
request.
think you're going to do that, because you'll just want to burn your computer, I think, at the end of it. Yeah. So. And that's it. That's a media event. And we had a good one. I was excited. We had every media outlet in attendance that covers stuff in the marketplace. And everybody was on script. And nobody said quotes that they shouldn't have quoted. And everything
no
is
scandal.
No scandal. It's a win. So now we're just at the point where, it's wait and see what comes out in the news as the day rolls on and as they tell their stories. And that's the other thing. Once you do this stuff and you put it out there, you can't change it, right? Like, don't.
So I was going to ask you, can you, if they make a mistake?
No,
not really.
It's what, if you make a mistake, they're not going to fix it. If they make a mistake, they're kind of obligated to do a correction, but it's kind of your job to make sure they get the right information.
Right.
If you give them the wrong information, they're like, hey, it's what was written. It's your problem, not mine. They don't like to do corrections very often unless they're actually in the wrong. But be careful, because once you give it to the media, you can't control the story. You can't control the story. You can hope that they're going to write about exactly what you presented them, but they might have witnessed something that happened there that has nothing to do with your story, but related to your story.
And is better news.
Yeah. Like they discover your running shoes are made by, child labor, right?
Yeah.
And they may go with that story. So when you invite them in, you can't necessarily control where they go with it. You can try and steer them in a direction. That's always the goal. But if they decide to take it off the rails, you're at their mercy all the time. So that's the final word of caution on that. So that's it. That's all for the Marketing Podcast. I'm Heather Watson.
And I'm Brendan Quigley.
Thanks for listening.